So l- let's see where we go today. I have a couple of different questions. And the first one, I'm not sure if it's a question that either of us are going to have a solid answer for. I think it's a question that arises from a feeling. And maybe the feeling is not enough fleshed out or could do with some better perspectives. That's my teaser. So
Okay.
the question that stems from that is a sense in men, and I know this from the current group that I'm working with, a real deep inner sense that time is running out and one has to get on with their life, really.
Oh,
Um, the time is coming to settle down and to choose one woman or to commit fully to my one woman. But I think, and this is what they say, this is the last summer, this is the last year that I have to really live something or
wow.
achieve something or experience something before I then settle down. So, so the sense of, you know, adulthood is here and it's calling me, and yet there's something I want to do with women, with seduction, with love, with living something, and I need to be able to complete that so I can settle down with a clear mind and a clear heart and be like, yes, I chose this now. I chose to commit, and I don't have these hangover thoughts of what I missed out of or what could have been or what did I not experience in my growing up. And just for context, um, this is a conversation in men kind of mid late 30s and very early 40s, so around this mark.
And you're all saying that this particular year.
Yeah, like this summer is the summer.
So, in other words,
Like,
this moment in time, as opposed to this moment in their life.
uh, well, this moment in time is the moment in their life where the circle has to complete. So,
Hmm.
in other words, by the end of the summer, I want to feel that there is a gladness or a satisfaction in my soul, that all the things that I would have got, should have got, had to have had with women, and exploring myself, sowing my wild oats might be another part of it. This has been accomplished, and I can move on with a good heart and move peacefully now into lifelong commitments.
So, you think then it's something along the lines of something in the air and something in the zeitgeist and the way things are sitting in the world right now that that concentrates this urgency upon them?
I'm not sure if it's in the air or in the zeitgeist. I think it's more a particular moment in a man's life, which is perennial, that many of us will meet.
So
That sense
we could
of
have this conversation 4 years ago and say the guys I'm working with, this is the thing they're struggling with right now.
sure, sure.
But
Is this question new for you then? Like, is this not something that you've heard over the years?
I think it's new because I've heard that individually, but it sounds like it's a collective that you're hearing. Like
Well, two or three people. So I'm not getting a deluged inbox of,
uh,
hundreds of people that are suffering with this thing. It's more a much more private and deep consideration that I think a smaller number of people are going through very, very deeply,
mhm.
rather than a large amount of people are being affected by in some more surface way.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So rather than trying to put some kind of world shifting, uh, epoch changing energy across the
Yes,
whole spectrum
we're
of.
yeah, we're administering to the few rather than the many. But I mean, like, if we want to start it in this place, you must have come across the thing of sowing your wild oats. And how do I
Oh,
know when
always.
enough is enough? Yeah. How do I know when enough is enough? How do I know when I'm ready to settle down? The pressures are on me to settle down. Have I sowed enough?
The biggest
And
thing, the biggest thing I um, have conversations with men who are youngish, like
mm,
in their 20s, and they're in a relationship with a great girl, and they like her a lot, and she's like the perfect, wife and mother material that they were looking for their whole lives, and she's sweet, and is they get this twinge of, wait a minute, this is really wonderful and profound. But am I ready for this? Have I sowed my wild oats? Have I experienced a few things? Have I traveled enough? And they really have a bit of an existential uh, question in their mind because they're not sure if they are if they've got all that experiential this adventure out of their spirit or not, or out of their heart or not. You know, so for sure, I get that from young men in their 20s
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot. Big question.
So there's almost this um kind of, don't know if this is the right word, kind of a slightly poisoned chalice in a way. Like you've found someone who would be ideal material, ideal wife material, um, that you
Mm.
could settle down with, but you found her too early. It's like you reached the end game too early in time before having gone through all the detours and the useless side avenues and rich learning experiences and so on. You missed the rest of the adventure before you found the thing.
Well,
So
you're
so
not
what do you?
sure. Like you think like that's the thing is like they don't think they're not sure that I need more time or I should have had more time and I found this great girl because one day they're thinking, man, I'm in love with her. There's nothing greater. My life is fantastic, wonderful, all this kind of stuff. And then the next day they're like, well, wait a minute. The question goes up and down. It floats in and out of their psyche.
So what's your I mean, is it a one size fits all solution that you give, or what is the range of responses you give to men who are in this situation?
Well, the what I do say to young men, whether it's responsible or not, I have no idea. But I know that if they are having this twinge of feeling that they're missing out on something that they haven't quite explored, and they go down this dedicated, committed path with this wonderful woman that they're with, it's going to rear up again. It's going to, it's not going to go away. And they're always going to have this underlying feeling that maybe um, I haven't explored all my youthfulness yet. So my advice is them to them is to really sit down with her and talk it out and say, listen, my dear, I adore you. You're my love of my life. And I have this unrest in my soul and I don't quite understand it. Because you have to confront it and have to try and really come to terms with it so that you can have a fully conscious, committed expression with your beloved going forward. Otherwise, it's going to be you're not going to be fully present with her. You have to confront it, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
Now you're talking about. I think this the subject you're talking about. I'm specifically talking about young men in relationship with a great woman who feel like they haven't really sold their wild oats yet. But are you talking more about men who, at the beginning of the call, you said men who are living a certain life and they realize that this summer I've got to change my life completely.
I would say I would say the conversation I'm having is a direct echo of the same thing that you're talking about, which is men have gotten to their late 30s or their early 40s, and whatever they were doing in their 20s or whatever struggles, difficulties they had, they found themselves in the world. Their feet are on the ground. They have resources. They have, like, of all types. They have found themselves as, yeah, this is who I am. They have a sense of identity as a man. They get their value and their attractiveness as a man, and they feel that as they walk around, which is women pay me attention. More beautiful women pay me a greater kind of attention right
Right.
now than they did 10, 15 years ago. This is amazing. You know,
Capitalize
I,
on
I don't want to let this go because I certainly didn't have a sniff of this when I was younger. Um,
it.
while at the same time, there are questions of, whether they're in a relationship or whether they're not. It's like, I know that I could be, but I really should be getting on with something in my life. There's a feeling I really should be getting on with something. I really should commit. Almost like, and this is where I inquire a little bit. It's like, well, what's the feeling actually, what's the life that you feel you should be doing? And is that itself a construct or some kind of outdated image or a guilt or, some hazy thing that your father said or that you've been reading in the media that you should be settling down right now? Hence why you feel a kind of pressure. So is the pressure to settle down actually your own, or is it, did you catch that through the airwaves? Is that a conditioning that's creating this sense?
Well, I don't think that society's got that kind of pressure anymore. On we're so individual, and we so customize our own experience that conforming to societal pressure, I don't think for men is any pressure at all, except maybe if you're Asian and your
Hmm.
parents really want you to marry somebody and settle down, right?
Mm.
Uh, but I don't. I think it's internal pressure on yourself. Should I settle down or should I not? Do I want to have this home and family, or I think it's the internal ultimate question for yourself. Am I ready for this, or am I not ready for this? As opposed to society saying you should be, by the time you're 32, you should be XYZ. I think. Um, and like I said, it's customized that, as we know, there's modern couples are not having children these days in the developed world. And so the rules of the games have changed for across the spectrum, and the dating world's changed. We went from analog dating to digital dating, and it's everything's in flux. And I think that's what young men and older men are feeling too, is that the they don't the rules of the game are changing. You're trying to still play the same game. You're trying to figure it out, and it's not easy. So, and I mean, if you look back in historical cultures and the way things have been, a young man would, go out, test himself, maybe do some battles or something, or create something or build something, and then he'd create a family. He'd find in his church or something, or his community or his town hall, he would meet some young beauty and he would start a family with her. And that's not a given anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a given, So it's like choose your own adventure. Turn to page 32, or change. It's society doesn't have that kind of heaviness on people anymore.
Yeah. I think the word battles encapsulates something, which is you went out there, you could have died, but you survived and you came home. And probably you're very glad to get home because what you saw out there was brutal. So we've
Yeah.
just had end of World War II commemorations in England. I was just back in England and watching all of this, and a lot of the people that came home after World War II never shared any of their stories with anybody.
No.
Like the just the where that experience took them to was so intense it either didn't have words or it would be so traumatizing to put words on it, or that they would be things that they would not want women and children to hear about. And I don't quite know exactly which of those
Yeah.
it was most of, but it uniformly people didn't talk about their experiences. But the the
Hmm.
tissue that joins the younger men that you're talking about with a bit more middle-aged men that I'm talking about is initiation,
Yes.
which is I can't settle down yet in full peace because I know that there is a loop that's not been closed or an initiation that's not been had. And
Correct.
I think there are different initiations, like many different initiations that have to be had. And some of them are quite simple, more in the land of men. Like I need to go out and I need to fight against other men or fight with other men or take on some very masculine kind of an initiation to have the sense that
Sure.
I can stand up in the world of men with honor and respect and be seen and as a leader, as an elder in that world.
Hmm.
And I think there are also initiations in nature, like fighting the elements, scaling a mountain, getting lost in some jungle, going into some other people's and having been a gift to them or received a gift from them for yourself. And then I think there would be a third kind of initiation, which is all the initiations that ideally you're going to have in the land of women: romantic, intimate, sexual, conquest, strength? Are you have I felt myself in my godly power? But have I also been with a woman who was absolutely overpowering and felt that as well? And this, I think, is where things get really nebulous. Because if you're seeking for a initiation in the land of women, how do you know when you've got it? And how many? And this is one of the kind of darker questions a lot of men are
Mhm.
struggling to answer in our community, right? How many women do I actually have to be with before it's enough?
Uh, yeah, I mean, like,
What kind of range of sexual experience do I need to have so that I can calm something down in my heart and think, yeah, I actually did that. I did that with honor. I had the male experience. I embodied the Casanova archetype enough that I can kind of let go of any attachment to being that or not having had it.
right. The thing is, Jordan, is like, if men were consciously having these considerations and thinking this and sitting looking out the window and having this contemplation of all the things you just said for the last few minutes, um, we would start to get somewhere. But uh, not their fault. We just react to life. We
Mm.
exist. Um, we move through life and we don't have this clear deliberation, consideration on what it means and am I ready and this kind of stuff. We just feel angst and we go through it about our day and we start to date a girl. Before you know it, it's exclusive. You didn't expect it. You didn't ask for it. You didn't not ask for it. You like it and you like being with her. And so you let things just kind of blossom up around you. And now you're quote unquote, to young men, they feel stuck in a situation that isn't bad, but it just happened to them. So life is what's happening to them. The saying, life is what happens when you're making other plans. And they don't have that. What you just said was very clear eyed, saying, if I got this out of my system, have I experienced something? Have I loved all the women and have I been overpowered by women? Well, they haven't come to that consideration level. And we talk about this all the time. In our membership, we talk about this constantly. This is the measure of a man. This is what makes us exist. And we talk about initiation. I wrote about the Vision Quest kind of experience for young men 20 years ago. So, but I think that most men have this nebulous existence where they're flowing with what the next trend and what they should do, and they follow the career that they just happened upon, and they don't deliberate and they don't take conscious steps to sever themselves from that easy flow. That narrow is the road. That the few will take, and they go down the wide beaten path that everybody takes, and they don't feel like they're doing it by choice. It's just they turn around, they're 20, and they say, okay, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have this, and this, and this, and they have this consideration, this plans, and then turn around, they're 30, and they said, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be a millionaire. I have this plan, I have this goal, I'm going to like this deep seated energy in me, and they turn around and they're 40, and they're like, okay. So
Mm.
life is, they keep turning around, and the next year is here, and they were still making these plans, and then they get this. Most people get disappointed and feel like I'm on a treadmill of life, and I'm not fulfilling. And now I'm 40. I'm getting older, so now my opportunities are slipping away, and they don't realize that was what life is. Life is you trying to figure it out, and until you know. I remember one of my uncles when he was old, and I happened to mention, oh, you got some drilling there, huh?
Mm.
Anyway, my uncle, he happened to mention, I happened to mention that, man, when you're old, you look back and think, wow, at least I had that long life, and it was worth it, and I'm ready for getting old. And so that he said, and he shook his head like this. He said, no, you never, never, never get used to it. You never want it. You're never ready for it. You never figure it out. You know. So
Mm.
yeah.
So there's a sense of whatever you live, whatever you do, whatever you achieve, that you can choose to be committed to something or somebody, but next year, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, that there's still that sense of, yeah, there are more
Uh-huh.
adventures to be had that I didn't have.
Well, what I wanted to say there was that um, the more I understand this, and the more you go through life, the more you realize that life is just it surprises you. You're not ready for any of it. You're not ready to turn that birthday or to turn that corner, and it just kind of sneaks up on you when you're least expecting it. And but when you realize that is the sum total and the capital of life, that's what it is. Everybody who's gone through history has turned around and all of a sudden they're old, or turned around and they're in a relationship that is not meaningful or fulfilling to them.
Mm.
That accidentally happened to them. And when you realize that is the measure of life, that is how it operates, something, and you can relax and say, okay, because to go back to what I said earlier, Jordan, the deliberation that you talked about, a young man saying, if I figured this out yet, if I done all the things I want to do, we don't consciously, actively, with conversational tone, converse with ourselves about this kind of thing. We just turn around and now we're 30. We turn around now we're 40. That makes sense? Am I clearly saying what I'm trying to say?
One of one of the things I'm hearing is, and again, it's more what I'm hearing than what you're saying, but the sense that I can control somehow my unknown future by closing the door to this stage of sowing my wild oats and then walking through a new door, which is, oh, I'm just committed to everything and that's clear and I don't have any more mental noise about the topic. Like that itself can be a huge illusion and projection and misunderstanding of life, in that you
We don't
mistakenly
have
believe that you can put a phase behind you.
yeah. Like I guess what I'm trying to allude to is the fact that if we're not deliberately consciously choosing a path, then the path is being chosen for us. And it is what it is. I I have this notion, and I've kind of said it a few times in the past, but it's not clear because I don't know if it's completely accurate. But I kind of said that a man should change his life completely every decade. And if you look back in your life, like the decades that I've had, you can see whether you chose it or not. It feels like there's a different tone to the decades of your life. So your 20s feels like different than your 30s, circumstantially, and just in the environment and everything. And 40s feels different than that. 50s feels different than that. And maybe it's a natural progression. I don't know. But if you consciously think in decades of your life and say, okay, the next 10 years, here I am right now, I'm 32 years old. By the time I'm 42, I want to have this understanding, a conscious movement forward in your thinking. Then you don't get accidentally welled up around the ears with this, for instance, this relationship that is wonderful, but you didn't expect and you're not sure you're ready for. You didn't consciously choose it. I think something like that.
So you're saying that if you don't consciously choose that you'll have a relationship in the next decade, but then you end up and get into one, then that's you getting swept away by life and not actively designing it.
And it could be a good thing.
Right.
Um, it could be a serendipitous thing that you meet somebody that you weren't expecting. I met Deanna and I wasn't expecting to be in a relationship, you know. So
Right.
I'm not saying that you have to say, no, okay, I'm ready for a relationship now. There's my moment. I'm just going to start going on Tinder and finding the girl that's going to be the woman of my dreams. It's not that at all. You have to leave yourself open to the possibilities. But I think what I am saying is that what you don't want is that angsty feeling of twinge in your breast that's saying, man, the years are flying by, and I don't feel like I'm doing what I set out to do.
Mm.
That's the, when I quit my corporate job, and I had that feeling every year, that twinge in my solar plexus, where I would look out the window and realize, man, another year went by and I'm sitting in this corporate office. It's not me. I'm this wilderness kid that, sneaks from tree to tree. And I'm not that guy anymore. And I feel like it's not aligned with me. I didn't feel aligned. When I quit my corporate job and I quit into nothing, I reduced myself to a carry-on bag and one pair of shoes. And I hit the road with no real idea or plan, no money. I didn't have that twinge of anxiety in my soul every time my birthday came around anymore. The feeling, people are singing happy birthday to you and you're smiling and nodding, but you feel, the year just flew by and I didn't do all the things I wanted to do this year. So that twinge in my heart went away when even though I had no plan about the future, no idea about how the future is going to unfold, it went away because I felt aligned with my North Star or whatever it is I wanted to do. Make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take another way of looking at things. Let's say, I've not been consciously designing my life, but now I am. And I want to allot my time, my focus, my energy for the next few months or the next few years to really tackling some kind of missing piece or some kind of nagging sense that I haven't lived fully with women, that I want to show up and have some experience that lets me know I've done enough in the land of women. I can now hang up my hat, my boots, and settle down with the kind of marriage material kind of woman. Whether a man takes months or years to do this, what do you sense he's actually looking for, and what needs to happen for a man to be able to move on from his seeking in the land of women?
Well, that's it. I mean, you ask a guy, what is your ultimate goal when it comes to women, and they will say, well, I want to date for a while. I'm not ready for a relationship, or I want to find a good woman and settle down, start the next phase of my life. So I can't answer that guy's question or your question about how will he know, because we're all in different phases of wanting certain outcomes. It depends on what outcome he's ultimately really wants, and that changes day to day. This is the problem with saying, okay, this is what I want, because it changes day to day. That's why I say you should reconnect with that every day in your Amrati ritual, because it really does change with the weather and the moods. And you're in a relationship with this girl for 4 years and you really adore her and love her and think, man, this is great. What a wonderful woman. And tomorrow you wake up and think, man, I saw that there was 2 girls walking on the street, and why am I thinking about that? When I have this at home. And it's the natural progression of confusion of life as we go. So these big decision life extension existential questions, I can't answer for a man. I can't say you will know that it's time to move on to relationship consciously when you have done, failed 3 businesses, let's say. You know what I mean? I just don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because typically all we can do with the mind when we project out into these situations is to kind of think up, well, it's going to be a number of women, or it's going to be a particular kind of woman, or a particular kind of scenario. But like, if I had that, then that would be the thing. But it typically ends up not being the thing, because guys can have that. I've known the guy go off to Brazil. He has his perfect 10 model, and he goes back home and he's like, yeah, it wasn't enough. Didn't scratch the itch. And there have been other men who maybe, let's say, their full resolution in the land of women would seem very anticlimactic, to a lot of people, and yet they achieve the resolution in their own heart. So when I was 23, the first of my group of schoolmates got married, and he had his party, and we were kind of dancing and drinking and so on. And then towards the end of the night, I took him out to the corner of the room, and everyone has a moment with the bride and the groom over the course of the evening, because they're like royalty, right? They're a celebrity within
Right.
within the wedding reception. And I asked him very, very sheepishly, and I, in my most awkward English way, wanted to ask him the question. And I got halfway through, and he said, "You want to know if I feel I fucked enough women so that I could settle down with my wife?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to ask." And he's like, "I've got absolutely no qualms or reservations at all. Like, I've done it." He had a girlfriend at high school, a girlfriend at university, married the girlfriend from university, was with 2 women, and everything was answered with certainty. In a way, there was no part of my mind that was left, he's just bluffing. It was like, no, he's destined for an early marriage with a real partner. Maybe they live out the same as what they grew up with their own parents, just like familial harmony. And maybe
Yeah.
that domain of their lives has been easy for them. But the resolution of any restless seeking he had with women, or love or sex or intimacy, was total, and from a very young age. And then there's the question of like, and some guys, of course, they want to be the Casanova, they want to be you, they want to live the archetypal Ars Amorata life, and in their mind, maybe that takes thousands of women, and only after I've had thousands of women can I reach this point of resolution. You see how vast the discrepancy. So when we're seeking initiation, the psychology of it is, I'm seeking a particular experience. The experience doesn't have to be so huge and mind-blowing, but the experience does have to hit me in a certain way, so that the restlessness, the itch, the unintegrated part of me that is seeking something, meets the experience in real life, and then it can really let go.
Boy, if only it was so cut and dried and pat, so clear like that, because there's so much of a spectrum in what you said, of how we really feel.
Yeah.
And if we really had the certainty, came like your friend at the marriage came down to it, and it could be absolutely true. And maybe it's still
Or
true.
it could be false. He could be on a one-way flight to Bangkok right now, paid for
Yeah,
by the business, and nobody knows about it, in secret. 20 years later, after
yeah.
having resolved it, the issue comes up further down the
I'm
line.
telling you, there's nobody that will resolve that in your mind. This is why I said, like in the Alabaster Girl, your man sets out to seek and he gets his heart broken. And he thinks, what? That was true love, I thought. What? How is that possible? And it gets, your whole world gets upturned, and you think you start to get this realization that life, throws curveballs at you. And then so you start to date, and then you get married, and that fails. And then you start to date again, and but you're suspicious, or not suspicious, but you're just kind of cautious because you're being careful, because all your illusions are gone. But if you really seek, in other words, the woman that you thought was your best guess, like your friend at the wedding, that was his best, sincerest guess at a future of happiness, and it could be, but it could also not be, as we've seen across the board, because people change, things change. You realize things about yourself, about her, that you're not growing at the same pace, that kind of thing. The Bible says, "Love the one you're with." In Ecclesiastes, and there's, to me, there's a world of wisdom in that, because you're never going to find that quote unquote pure essence of the feminine that you've been seeking all your life, because she's going to have her dirty socks hanging on the sink and be in a cranky mood one morning, and you guys are going to whatever these vicissitudes of life happen, love the one you're with. Because I remember the story when I was a young kid. This sociologist in the 30s went to this primitive tribe in Papua New Guinea or something like that, and they didn't have the concept of marriage. They just would just like, it was kind of free love. And she asked one of the elders, one of the old medicine man, well, what happens if you lose your quote unquote your current partner, your wife? He goes, just pick another one. They're all crazy. Just pick one. They're crazy. This old guy said it doesn't matter. And the idea is that we can turn to the one, our beloved, if we have examined our hearts. This is the thing. If we've really examined our hearts and really turned into what it is that, try to understand life as we best know it for ourselves, we can turn to the one that we're in relationship with. And I'm telling you, if she's kind-hearted and sweet and adores you, and it's not just a roommate situation or a relationship where she despises you, which you should end immediately, of course. But if you can turn to her and say, this is her, this is the one, and she can, in your eyes, she can grow into, because it's as good as anything. I shouldn't say that. That's a bad phrase. I don't mean it like that. But what I mean is you can re-look at her with different perspective, different eyes, because you're broken and unfulfilled, and she's broken and unfulfilled. And you're not going to meet that perfect woman, your Instagram model that's also got the perfect talent and the perfect intellect and the perfect emotional EQ, this kind of stuff, right? You're not going to find it. And you can look at her and say, and love the one you're with, as the Bible says, because you were drawn to her and she was drawn to you. So it's the grass is always greener, and we're always trying to seek that ultimate one. And a lot of the problem that men have is they have a great girl in their life who's a sweetheart to them, and they like her, but maybe there's something better out there.
What you're saying is very profound, and my sense of it is that what a man is looking for when the grass is always greener is he is looking for some transcendent ideal, and he's not yet had the realization that a relationship is with a flesh and blood mortal person who's on their own journey and full of imperfections.
Correct.
And so one of the signs I would say of maturity, which took me a fair while to get to, was the idea that there isn't, I used to call it kind of like relationship blackjack. There's a lot of men are evaluating the cards they have in their hand. I've drawn, I've got to go right now. It's an 18, it's 19. Do I stick or do I twist? And the guys who stick are unsatisfied because they know that 21 is possible, and they would like to have 21 for themselves. 21 being the perfect illusion, actually the impossible illusion. But then if you twist, you're permanently alone and looking for somebody else again. And I remember very strongly kind of being, let's say, somewhere in South America with a beautiful girl with me, and I'm just thinking, God, in the next country or in the next city, there's certainly going to be a 21. And it's just this ongoing game of blackjack, which the person that really gets fooled is yourself, but all the women that you reject along the way. But it's definitely it's a search for the sublime.
Yes,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
And you actually think that the sublime exists in a mortal person all of the time, and that you can meet your divine match. But the more you keep projecting that the sublime is actually embodied fully and properly in a woman, the more you're going to miss the nature of it, which is your girl that you already have. She has it sometimes, if you can see it, and a lot of the time she doesn't quite have it, and that's frustrating. That's the experience of being in a relationship with two egos. So I think maybe the initiation is around that discovery. Like, what I've got in my hand, the woman I've got in my hand, is everything already. And I stopped dreaming about this impossible ideal.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just a question of flavor. Like, maybe let's say that there were some girls at school that always picked on you. They were the bad girls. They would smoke and wear leather jackets and all this kind of stuff. And you grew up and you're very good with the Sally or Jane next door. But the kind of dark feminine archetype or something is, that you can't quite get in your power around women like that. So that there's something in men that's like, you know what, I just want to have like a dark or a scary or a siren or a one of these archetypes. I need an experience with that so I can complete the thing that happened at school. So much of this is around that, actually, right?
Yeah.
So spitting some things out here, but trying to put meat on the bones, actually, about, because I guess the question I have for you as well is, you talked about different decades, and obviously you're known for having a very long and experience-rich journey through the land of women, right?
Yeah.
How did you sit with the qualities of restlessness, needing more, maybe thinking that there would be some alabaster girl out there in the next country and I would just have to keep going on and on and on? And were there kind of like different levels or moments in you where you were like, actually, I don't have to do that anymore, or God, I realized that another woman in a nightclub is going to has nothing of
Oh,
meaning to me in my life. I can let go of that chase and that endless, because it can be an endless pursuit, right? I can just let go of all of that and relax and feel like I'm already
there's
here somehow.
some point in my life for sure, and I can't pinpoint it, where that where that that at some point in my life it went away, the idea that this girl's more special than others, I think. um there's an archetype I'm drawn to, obviously, right? There's women that I'm really attracted to and think she's fantastic, etc. So I don't mean that. It's more like, um I have no illusions about that essence, that kind of the idea that some woman is going to fulfill some longing in me. The longing in me is, it's a transcendent longing, obviously, right?
Mm.
And the old cliche is, you get in a relationship and 18 months later you're it's not what you thought. Keep the love alive and all that kind of stuff, right? So I see a woman, I see beautiful women and I could be attracted to them. And I also get the sense that I have a knowledge in me, a knowing that that initial impulse um, could go away in the future. And like, I'm not smitten, which is, that's a strange thing to say. Wow. And I'm in a relationship with a great girl and I'm smitten by her. I see her and I'm like, just on the weekend here, this last weekend, we had a dinner party and I'm watching her float around and flutter. And I'm just in awe of who she is as a person. So I'm smitten by her, but I'm not smitten by any other women. And then I meet a lot of women. And um, uh, I still meet women because that's who I am, right? I like girls, but there's none of them that really captivates me to the point of thinking, man, I've never had anything like this before. I've never had anyone like her before. I've never been like, that's gone for me. That's a strange thing, but I'm smitten by my beloved, and I like to look at her way more than I like to look at other women, and I like to look at women a lot. You know what I mean? So something changed. When did that change? I don't know. When did that shift for me? Because I was always seeking and chasing women my whole life, and that's a really strange thing to say, that I'm no longer completely in awe or in under the spell of a woman. It's not possible for me. Not possible to be under the spell of a woman. That's weird. To be like, like, wow, Star Trek. And before I met my my beauty that I have now, who I've been with for many years, there was a period of time when I was traveling and stuff, and there was not a woman on earth, which is a strange thing for me to say. There was not a woman on earth that I was thinking about when she wasn't around. Now, that's not to say that if, Mary Sue knocked on my door and showed up, I would be delighted and I'd be excited to see her, and I'd be completely celebrating and delighted. But when she wasn't around, I wasn't I wasn't laying in my bed dreaming about her or daydreaming about her, looking out the window and wonder, what should I call her? I didn't have that for a number of years.
You said a moment ago, you said holy longing or divine longing, something like this. You said there's a sublime, transcendent longing.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk about what that is and what it feels like exactly, because what I'm hearing is it sounds like you've disentangled your longing for a woman from a transcendent longing in a way that I believe most men have got the two merged together. They can't tell one from the other. So instead of having any transcendent longing, they're longing for a woman or many women or a particular scenario, thinking that's the transcendent. And that's what keeps them stuck in this endless carousel of chasing women. So I just hear that you've actually disentangled the two. So
Yeah.
what's the transcendent longing? How do you know it's transcendent longing? And what's it feel like? Yeah, how does it manifest? Because maybe more of us are having this, and we just don't have a name for it. We're just pining for a woman that's not here.
Right. So I think you said it right, because my whole existence and my whole longing and my whole searching and for beauty and treasure hunting was all women based all my life. And it isn't now. And I'm looking over here because I got a pile of books on the floor right here that I can't wait to dig into, and I won't get into them all, obviously. Last weekend I was in Venice, and 300 years since the birth of Casanova, and I'm in the birthplace of Casanova, and I see the places that he trod, and Casanova's been a very influential figure for me, massively, probably the most influential figure of that shaped my consciousness and the way I think about things. And I have a lot of affection for Casanova and the idea of Casanova, because maybe the reality wasn't what he wrote, but still. So my transcendent longing is that connection to Venice and Casanova. These books here that I want to read, that I want to study. I'm burning inside still for that longing, but it's disentangled from women. You're right. I've seen that I've been down the path with women to a degree that that it would take me quite a bit to be smitten by a certain woman. If it's possible anymore, maybe that's done. That's strange. It's a strange thought.
So your transcendent longing is a little bit different to the kind of divine longing they talk about in different mystical traditions, where you get kind of Rumi in the desert and he's twirling around and with his arms open to God, pray in, divine Father, come in and absorb me and take me away, like this kind of thing. Yours is much more history, myth, kind of lineage and connection to people that are not here, that left a trace, reading and feeling into maybe more of an imaginary, not wholly imaginary, but using imagination and wonder to kind of suffuse yourself into a world of, I don't know, the understanding, 100%. But not even, I guess. And again, I don't imagine that there will be a moment where you're like, oh yeah, my transcendent longing for Casanova and his myth is fulfilled because I finished the final book. It's almost like a ungraspable grasping. I don't know. I'm throwing some words on it. You tell me if it's wrong, but
no, yeah. I mean, like it's a shift. There's a shift in me for certain, and I don't know when it kicked in, but I'm not this open heart open, receiving palms up type of guy. I don't have that in me at all.
Yeah.
I but philosophically, the philosophical um, things that have gone before and journeys and simplicity of a life, well lived, even though you made all the mistakes in the world, that fascinates me still to this day. and so to look at your life as a narrative, we've talked about many times, right? As a story, the story element of life just fascinates me. And against the back pinnings of space-time universe, and the universe is certainly billions of years old, all this kind of stuff that we talk about, and we're pinpointed in this moment. And I'm fascinated by that, and what it is that is an artful life, and the concept of art, as opposed to meditative, silent retreaty type stuff. I don't do that kind of stuff. But my meditation was always women. And my whole life was women. And it's not now, I guess. I guess I could say it's not, because I rode that stallion and got bucked off, or he rode that mare and got bucked off many times. There's something else. And it's the same pursuit. It's for sure the same pursuit. But I think you really nailed it when you said it's been disentangled. My adoration for women and my adoration for the universe has been disentangled to some degree.
This is one of the questions that I'm left with after all this, thinking about the different men, because it's like whether you've been with one woman or 1,000, at some point the impression or the image that you're going to have a particular experience with a woman or with more women, once you realize that actually the experience you're looking for, you're going to get somewhere else in life, within yourself or in some other pursuit, it takes a lot of the heat off actually needing to do that with a woman.
Wow.
I would still venture to say that there are some initiations that we need in the land of women, but possibly all of them can be had with one woman, maybe a second.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah.
I really believe that if you can come to this fruition of turn this corner in life so that you're not frantically, desperately trying to fulfill some dead spot in your empty hole in your heart and trying to fill it with a variety of women, I really do think that you can have a meaningful, committed relationship with a great woman that you adore, and that I really believe that. I mean, that's the extent. The Amarati architect is this guy that loves women and moves to the land of women, but it's also somebody that ultimately comes to this realization that you're not going to ever find that ideal, and you can really turn your time and attention to the one who you're with, and really allow her to shine in your presence because you see her in a certain way. That's beauty needs a witness. That's a phrase I said 25 years ago, right? And beauty becomes alive in the presence of you because you're witnessing it, you're seeing it. And so I think that if you can turn that corner and you can really have a benevolent, kind, loving, empathetic relationship with someone who's going to blossom into that with you, it's fantastic. It's the best.
You said another phrase here, which I think is possibly the most crucial thing, which is the hole in your heart.
Yes.
You can try and fill the hole in your heart, or you might ask, what do I sense this hole in my heart needs to be fulfilled? And you could explore that and try and get it. But one thing that I'm having conversations about with more and more people is, what is the hole in the heart? What is the hole in your heart directly? And this is the thing that most people are not courageous enough to do, or they're not prepared enough to do it, or they don't have a context or a structure. But like, what if I am just with the hole in my heart without trying to fulfill it?
Yeah.
I think this is the most directly powerful thing we can do. And I had a very long conversation on Sunday with one of my groups about loneliness, the concept of loneliness. And so most men in our cultures hate to be lonely, because being lonely is a sign of losing. No one wants to be with you. You're not chosen. You're an outcast and a misfit, and so on. And you're kind of in the position of the reject if you're alone, and if you feel lonely and feeling lonely. Oh my God! The drama attached to someone who feels lonely typically thinks he's the only one who's lonely in the universe, and everybody else is at a party and not him. And I think this is kind of the root of the most childish thinking, right? Woe is me, and I'm the only lonely soul in the world, and this is not fair. You can go right down the path of real victim thinking here. But the quality of sitting with loneliness, like I have no lover, no friend, no conversation, no one to break this bread with. I'm alone in the world. I think that's the portal to some of the most profound experiences you can have. This is why we have a vision quest, because you are lonely. You're put on a mountain, you have to sit there alone and see who's there at the end of it. And typically, if you're there long enough, you'll go into the hole in your heart such that that hole will turn inside out, and you'll come out the other side. You'll go through a particular portal. In a way, you go through the portal that is the hole in your heart, and you discover something else. That there's no hole at all. It's completely full, but full of something different, which I maybe not say more about. Go and discover it for yourself. Yeah. Maybe we should leave with these questions. Like, if you are on a pursuit, or really imagining that, more women, or you have this itch to sow your wild oats, what is there a hole there that has to be fulfilled? What's the hole like exactly? Can you just feel and have this conversation? You keep saying having an internal conscious conversation within your own self. Have a conversation about the nature of the hole you think is in the middle of you, and the things that you think will fill it. And just start with this piece of the conversation. And maybe you have to get on a plane and go somewhere very exotic and lose yourself and have that whole experience and meet some women along the way, for sure. Go and create the novel and the mythical adventure about it. But I think the journey has to start and end with really understanding that original whole is not something to be afraid of. It is actually the thing that you want to travel into.
That's right. Yeah. Lots to think. This has been a very meandering thought process, this conversation that we've had, Jordan. Thinking a lot.
I think we finally ended up with some questions by the end of it.
Yeah.
Forget any answers, but so
yeah.
To sow one's wild oats and to put this restlessness to bed forever, so that I may continue with some ideal of an imagined life in which I won't have any problems. I won't have any internal problems anymore of this type. And instead of horny desire, I'd be filled with ease.
That's a big question. So this is a good. I mean, maybe we didn't come up with any answers for men on this conversation, but we definitely are hitting. We're definitely discussing something that they are thinking about, for certain.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'll catch you next time, Zan. And
okay.
Yeah, for viewers and listeners who are new to us, make sure to sign up for the newsletter if you're not already. We'll have a link below in the description. And membership is open as well at the moment if you want more and to be part of our community. And have monthly live conversations with Zan, be on the guest list to come to our conference in Bucharest, have access to the Essentials program, 90-day program, all that and more in the Essentials in the membership.
Perfect.